Welcome to the Filmmaker Mixer Podcast, the podcast by filmmakers for filmmakers. My name is Andrew, and I'm joined alongside my co-host Jeff, as always. Jeff and I are writers and directors and passionate about the art of storytelling. Filmmaker Mixer is a creative hub where aspiring and established filmmakers come together to share experiences, insights, strategies, and inspiration.
Hello, everybody. This is the Filmmaker Mixer Podcast, and today we chat with filmmaker GG Hawkins. She's got a new film called I Really Love My Husband. So, Gigi, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So, before we jump into your movie, I'm curious about you. How did you get involved in filmmaking, and how did that start for you?
Let's see. I had a whole other I'm like, how far back do I go? I've been telling people recently about like my sick fantasies as a child. I'd like watch Shirley Temple movies and then go act out that I was an orphan. And I think that was my start, was like being a little dramatic ham as a kid. But I was always sort of like dabbled in theater, but never thought I was good enough or funny enough. So I just denied myself creativity for a long time, including through college and even into my 20s. I worked a corporate job. I worked in ad sales, and but I always had sort of like would get my creative yayas out in an improv class or something. And then when I had the sort of title that you have till you retire, I looked around and I was like, everything is great on paper. Why am I still sad? And that's when I started taking screenwriting classes, because I was like, if I don't try to do the thing that I've always really deep down wanted to do, I'll never do it. So I wrote a pilot, I wrote a screenplay, I made my first short film. And it was in making that short film that I like something clicked and I was like, oh, this directing thing is the thing that's been missing. And I never looked back. It was, of course, a long journey to get here, but it was the beginning of that was when I knew.
Well, you said you were interested in acting and things as a young kid. Were you interested in writing then as well, or did that come
I
later?
would write I would write like bizarro like 2 pages of script on printing paper, and then my dad had a printing company, so I had a copy machine and then I'd make copies of it. So I think I was always into the idea of it. I really see myself as a director who writes as a means to direct. I don't love the process. I like doing it with people and having it be collaborative. But definitely didn't have the staying power. A lot of like diaries were started that were like, Dear Diary, like, I'm 7. I like my dog. And then I would never come back to it. It's like a lot of stutter steps, a lot of half starts.
Where's the conflict? Where's the drama?
Exactly, exactly. It was all in my head.
So where did this idea for this specific film come from? Did it spark from any previous experiences, just a kind of a story you wanted to tell, or sometimes it's just about, and we can get into this later about, budget filmmaking, knowing what you have at the same time to work with?
It's a little bit of both. So I was in my sort of early 30s, aka 3 years ago, and I kind of felt that urgency again that I had felt in my late 20s, where I was like checking in. I have to do something big because if I'm late to this career, so let me take a big swing. And I took a microbudget producing course at the Gotham, which is a nonprofit based out of New York, and it was all about like, well, what's your superpower? What's something that you have access to that's unique? And so I looked around, and there were 2 things. The first was I had a group of people that I had made a couple of sketches and short films with, and whenever we'd make things together, good things would happen, and that includes Ryan Thomas, our cinematographer, Madison Lannacy, our who is the lead actor and has story by credit on I Really Love My Husband, and our editor, Christina O'Sullivan, and Scott Monahan, who was originally supposed to play Drew, and he has a story by credit. So I was like, okay, if I have these people, these core people in on board, I can make something. And then on the other side, what do I have access to, which I do think is core for a micro budget film? I had my stepdad lived in Panama for 16 years on this island, and he built this house, and he's been trying to sell it for like 11 years. He's actually just sold it, but and he was about to sell it, and I was like, wait, Peter, like, can I shoot something there before we go, or before it goes away? And he said yes, and my mom also said yes, and so I had access to this location in Panama. And so I reverse engineered the story based off of the strengths of the group that I'd been making things with and this location that we had access to. So it's like, well, what's a story that could take place here? Yeah, so that's the origin of the story.
And once you decided to make that story because of the location you had, how quickly did you get it written?
Uh, it was May that I called up that core group of people and the producer and pitched them the idea. And I knew it would be about this couple on their honeymoon and the idea of like introducing a third in Panama. That's all I had. And then and they all said yes. And then, so May 2023, we were shooting in October 2023. So
Wow.
it came together very, very quickly. And I think when you have a like a flag planted in the ground, sometimes you just rise to the occasion. And sometimes you should stop and raise money first for what you're doing and figure and have a script that's solid. But I just sprinted at it, and I also treated it like a film, like film school, like an experiment. I even asked the actors and casting crew to not post on social media because I was like, what if this goes horribly wrong? And that sort of was, I think, a good mentality that created a space to try things and try and figure it out and took a lot of pressure off, which I think has also helped the project.
It's kind of funny because Jeff and I just got done doing a feature the same exact way, like you're saying, kind of reverse engineering. And I'm curious, in your experience, what were the biggest obstacles once like, of course, the biggest obstacle is getting it off the ground, getting people all together. But once everyone's together, you're shooting. I'm curious, were there any big obstacles that you remember, happy accidents, stuff like that?
Yeah. Well, in terms of the chaos of production, I was mentally preparing to have to be rained out because it rains a lot in Panama and we were just on the like front edge of rainy season. So I was like, we're gonna get rained out and I'm gonna have to rewrite entire scenes. You know, you've heard those nightmares stories. And that didn't happen. We did have like some illness going around in general. I think that just the stress of making a movie in Panama can be intense, but also there was some like bad ice that didn't really impact our crew that much. A couple people got sick, but they were actually shooting Deal or No Deal Island just up the on an island across from us. And apparently that entire cast and crew got like very sick from the ice, which you can't plan for. You just have to figure it out. And then I do remember, we're shooting on an island with no roads and you have to take a boat to get there. And the electricity went out when we were about to shoot a night scene. I think this was day 2 or 3, because we had the actor Lisa Jacqueline Starrett there who plays Kiki, who we only had shooting for 2 days. And I was like, oh shit, this is the moment that I have to rewrite everything because we can't shoot all night. Well, Aaron Ware, our gaffer, was like, well, we have the generators. So then we flicked on the generators and used those to light the entire scene for the entire night. And then we were cleaning up and kind of forgot that the electricity on the entire island was out.
Oh, wow.
And then Aaron was like, okay, the lights are about to go off. And we were going around with our iPhones, like lighting the way. And then the electricity came on like 10 minutes later.
That's funny. It's you had your living in oblivion moment with the what was that? The,
Exactly.
the the bad milk, was that what it was? And
Yes,
you had
yes.
well, I'm curious about something else. On your website, you talk a lot about micro-budget filmmaking and I'm curious, I know you talked about, what's your superpower that's going to be different for every filmmaker. beyond that, what do you think are maybe the top two or three important things for a young filmmaker who might be listening to think about if they want to make a micro budget feature?
So it's funny, I teach a course on like that I call microbudget mindset that I'll be teaching again in November. And and the reason that I call it microbudget mindset is because it really is a way of thinking that we can learn all about the physical production and structure of story and methods of acting, but the idea of putting together an entire movie and really being like the person who greenlights yourself, I think that is something that they don't teach you in film school or even when you're coming up through the industry. Like it's very much waiting for permission or waiting to find a sort of cavalry type thing, which we know isn't coming. So I think the first most important thing is only you are going to be the one that's driving this project forward from the moment of green light. And usually it's you or you and one other person. And I feel like you guys were each other's people if you just made a film. And at every stage along the way, you are the core, especially if it's a micro budget, because you're calling in favors, you're paying people like a rate that is lower than they would have gotten on, a commercial gig. And you have to be the one that keeps progressing the film forward. And it's interesting, like we just had our theatrical release and there were still things that went wrong at every step of the way, and that is what's going to happen. And I had like in the moment when things were going wrong, I generally kept it positive, and then I had to give myself a couple of moments recently to like mourn that it wasn't what I thought it was going to be, and and then at the end of the day, come back and reflect on the fact that it's actually a great success to have a micro budget feature premiere at South by Southwest and then have a theatrical run, a limited theatrical run. That is so rare. And so I think also taking, and this is one of the things I also talk about in the class, is it's really easy to get, because it's so hard and because you're usually the core moving it forward. And I do believe you have seasons of people like working with the composer where Holly Buhaya was a season of creativity and she was a rock for a while, but then she moves off the project because we're done with score. And so finding pleasure in those seasons of creativity and also being aware of something that I had to face, which is like, because it was hard, there were moments where I would be wallowing. I'd be like, oh, this is so hard. And it really was. Now moving forward, I think I will do, will know more about just being aware. And it's okay to feel the highs and lows of it, but being aware that, like, okay, and this is just part of the process. Like, it's going to feel bad, but then the highs are going to be incredible. And you need all of it to be a thing. And if you're just having fun making the movie, you're probably not doing it right. You're probably not pushing yourself. I don't know, maybe that's controversial.
Embrace the misery.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
So like taking this experience and kind of moving it forward in your career and like, everything you learn from it, what kind of creative goals, what do you have your sights or you set on next, for projects? I'm curious about kind of like you're saying, maybe going into the next season, opening up the next chapter.
Yeah. Well, there's two projects that I'm working on. One that is, I think will follow a much more traditional path that'll probably be like indie, but designed to work alongside the studio system. It's so interesting that we called that indie film, where it's actually sort of like just studio development happening outside of the studios to then be acquired and distributed by the 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 big players. And then I would hope that that comes to fruition. It'd be amazing. And then I also just really loved the collaborative nature of writing. I really love my husband because I would write outlines and iterations of it and then scenes, and then I'd bring in some of the actors, including Madison Lannesey and Scott Monahan, who both have story by credit, because we had this like collaborative rehearsal process. I'd give them a scene and then I'd take away the scene and I'd have them improvise and I'd record that. And then from that, we'd come up with this like these really like specific, juicy or hilarious or quirky like turns of phrases that felt really true to the actors and how they perform. And so I want to make another movie that will probably be a micro budget that is designed in the same way, where we have a few key actors in place and I workshop with them, and it becomes that this sort of like I write as a means to direct, but I think it's way more fun to be doing it when I'm workshopping it with people. Like the idea of being in a writer's room sounds like a dream because you're like coming up with story and character moments together. So that is something that I was sort of circling in the last and the last months around an idea with Madison, and then finally I locked in on something where I was like, okay, now this idea is working for me, and I pitched it to her, and I pitched it to another actor that we want to work with, and they're on board. So it's like, cool. Now I just have to take a nap, and then I'll get into this next phase.
Well, it is interesting when you collaborate with people in the writing process. You bring something to the table, they bring something to the table, and then when you work together, it creates this new thing,
Yeah.
which is quite lovely, when that happens and you come up with this new idea, this new concept or a new spin on what you're working on. But I'm curious, what kinds of stories are you drawn to, generally speaking? Character first, plot first? What are you
I
interested in?
definitely I feel like I love sinking my teeth into messy characters. I've included this in my bio. I love like millennial ennui. Like this is kind of settling. This is it. The sort of like comedy in the minutia of life and its messiness. So when The White Lotus came out a couple years ago, I felt so much relief. I was like, oh, this is like something that I felt permission to pursue my weird in seeing that show. I love how we get to explore and live with these characters. I've tried to write a couple movies that are very like, you know, plot driven or high concept. And I think I have really good high concept ideas, but I like don't have the McKee story brain or reps to feel great about what I'm writing versus when I'm like coming at it from a character perspective and figuring out like, what in myself can I mine? Usually like the most sort of like ugly, vulnerable human parts. Like that's where things get really interesting to me. And I love those gray areas.
So I'm curious, when you're going in character first, a flawed character, a broken character, are you what attracts you to you about the story? Is it you just come up with an idea for a character that you're interested in?
Mhm.
And if that's the case, then how do you break a story around it?
Oh, it's such a good question. And now that you're like digging in, I'm like, I wonder if I am character first. So I'm thinking of the script that I just was pitching at the Gotham Project Market, which is a story about like the highest stakes of female friendship. And I used to like I wrote it before I really loved my husband, and I originally wrote it as a micro budget. I was like, we'll get to a beautiful villa somewhere from somebody with a villa and shoot a movie there, and it'll be about these four characters, and it's pretty contained. And and it's a and it's a story that like, you know, it's interesting because I feel like sometimes it ebbs and flows, like the character will fuel the story or vice versa. And even though I've taken, a bunch of screenwriting classes and listened to, the script notes and the screenwriting life and like have really sort of studied and immersed myself in story, it's the most organic writing process that I've ever had was for a pilot actually, and it all came from a feeling of a character moment. I think somebody told me how Greta Gerwig writes, and she just starts to write scenes.
So for people who are interested in your new film and interested in following your career, how do they hear more about you? How do they hear more about the film? Are you a social media person? Are you on Instagram? How do they track you down?
I'm on Instagram, Lost in Graceland. I host a podcast called No Film School, which is where I am sort of sharing everything in real time and interviewing filmmakers just like this. I feel very seen by seeing you guys. And then the film itself is at I Really Love My Husband movie on Instagram. And that's usually where like the most up-to-date information lives.
Gotcha, gotcha. Well, what are you up to next?
Taking a nap and ironically, I have to record a podcast intro for No Film School right after this. And I'm teaching the Microbudget mindset class through Indie Empire on starting in November, and then the film comes out in November, which is exciting. And then just like figuring out how to make the next one, which I think they're, of course, would love the magical industry fairy to come along and greenlight the projects. But like, I do think that I see myself and my core crew hustling to make another one. Because again, it's like there's power when you are making your own stuff. Like you have full creative control to do what you want. So if there's a group of people that I feel like we have similar tastes and we trust each other, we make good things happen when we make things.
Well, it's funny because Andrew and I have talked about this, on the project that we just did. There is this weird thing that even if it's micro budget or small film, once you get it started and once it's real, people want to get involved. They come
Yeah.
on board. You think you're going to be doing everything yourself or with your small group, but people come out of the woodwork, and next thing you know, you've got, a great colorist, a great DP, or all these things. So
Yes.
it's an encouragement to young filmmakers who are listening. Like you said, greenlight yourself. Just go out and do it.
I agree. And there's something powerful about like the train is leaving the station. We're having a party on the train and feel free to join us if you want, but like no pressure. Like that, I think people are drawn to that as well. I'm sure you guys had the same experience.
Mhm.
I think one of the best things you can do beside coming up with a great idea is pick a start date and just go for it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Somebody soundbite that. That's really what is your project about?
Oh, you go ahead, Andrew.
It was a thriller horror. So Jeff and I are both from a small town in Illinois, and so when thinking about doing a film, we're like, we know the convenience store owner, the church, the local businesses, the cafe, the bars. So we wrote a small, contained little horror thriller about some missing kids in a small Midwestern town. The sheriff, goes searching, talking to town locals from the bar owner to the priest at the local church. So again, like you're saying, re-engineering, from your resources, a story, and then just greenlighting it yourself, picking a start date and finding the people that want to be a part of it.
So
We
smart.
we pitch it as misery meets Let the Right One In. So
Mhm.
Creepy.
it's
Ooh,
it's a cool little creepy
creepy.
story. Well, Gigi, it's been a pleasure chatting with you. It's been a lot of fun. And
Yes, thank you so much for having me
don't
on.
yeah, don't hang up. We want to chat with you just for a few minutes
Okay.
before we let you go. But thanks again, and best of luck with all your future projects. And circle back. We'll chat again.
Yay, thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you for listening to the Filmmaker Mixer podcast, a podcast created and hosted by filmmakers Jeff Stolen and Andrew Lamping, and produced by Melody Lopez.
Our theme song was composed by Stephen D. Bennett.
Make sure to follow or subscribe on whatever platform you're listening to us on, and stay tuned for future episodes.